Hey guys, it's Cece from the Scream Queens. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It is free. It allows you to edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and it also distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on many places such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. You can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's Anchor, ANCHOR.FM.
You know I don't watch that shit.
Why not? Too scared?
No, it's just what's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Because nobody admits anything they've done!
Hello, boils, ghouls, and non-binary creatures of the darkness. We are back with another episode of The Scream Queens. I'm Cece, and today, unfortunately, Jess couldn't make it. She is on assignment. However, I do have two very, very fun people here with me today. I have, and you may have heard him before on our It episode, my husband, Teddy, is back. Teddy, how are you?
Hello. Good to be back.
Yes. And we have a newcomer to the Scream Queens, one of my longtime good friends, Steven. Steven, how's it going?
Hey, all you cool ghouls and poltergeists. I'm doing pretty well.
Awesome. So the reason I asked them to be here today is because they're both the biggest fans that I personally know of the franchise we're going to be speaking about today. Before we get into that, I'll just kind of leave you guys to ponder about what it will be. Well, by the time you listen to it, you're going to know what it is anyway, but whatever. I'm going to go into some brief horror news, which actually just kind of coincides with today's episode, realistically. So I guess the cat's out of the bag at this point. We are going to be talking about Resident Evil, pretty much in all forms for the most part. The games very heavily we'll be talking about. And we will talk a little bit about at least the first film because Jess and I, they kind of put us to the test to at least watch the first film because neither one of us have played any of the games or watched any of the movies. So we were going to kind of discuss the film. I might just do a brief discussion of it, just kind of my thoughts on it. But we're going to be heavily basing everything on the game today, on the games, excuse me. And we do have some information on the HHN house that happened during 23. So we are going to cover that as well. But let's go ahead and start with the news I have. It's just one brief piece of news, and this was actually recommended to me by Steven. So Resident Evil is getting a new CG series. It's coming to Netflix in 2021. Just a brief information on what's going on with it. It does state that it will star Leon and Claire, reunited from Resident Evil 2. Let's see what else. There is a trailer already. So if you go to Netflix's Twitter, it is there. It doesn't say exactly like when in 2021. It just has that date for now. So it's going to be called Infinite Darkness. So look out for that. But that's really all the news I have right now. I didn't really collect a whole lot. But we did, want to kind of keep it to the theme. So without further ado, why don't we just go ahead and get into the game reviews? So what we did was we had both Teddy and Steven rank like the main games, I guess you would say, right guys? Like the
More or less with some concessions.
like
Yeah.
not really the remakes and all that, right? Just kind of like the core games.
Well,
So
I
the
added.
remakes are considered the core games. Let's
Oh,
be
okay.
real.
Well, I don't know. See, this is why.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Teddy, but I try to keep out the survivors as much as I love Survivor 2. But I mainly try to keep to the main games as much as I could, and the remakes.
Yeah, outside of I personally didn't add the Revelation games or the Survivor games, mainly because who plays a Resident Evil game on a 3DS?
Awkward book.
But yeah, it's main franchise for me. The staples from Zero all the way through Code Veronica and Outbreak.
Fair enough.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do this, usually, we will take everybody's ranks and we will kind of put them in a master list. Unfortunately, we don't have that format today just because it's the two of them. So I figured it would be okay for them to just kind of go from their least favorite. So now I think it's through 10, so 1 through 10. So their least favorite on their list, kind of moving along to, what's the top on their list. Kind of going to give a brief description of why you liked it or why you didn't really like it, or what you liked about it and what you didn't like about it. That's what it was, right? So without further ado, whoever wants to go first? Do we want to flip a coin?
I personally will talk forever on this topic. I know Steven probably will as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't really necessarily... We could go in whichever order if he wants to start first, and then I'll go, and then the next number I'll go first, then he goes, so on and so forth.
All right, that sounds good to me.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fair. All right, so I kind of have the list in front of me as well, just to kind of keep along with you guys, because I have no idea what you're talking about, because I probably won't ever play these games. I only remember the one scene from the one game that Teddy was playing for 5 ever, where the girl's trying to hide in the one place, and that big fat nasty guy's trying to find her. That's literally all I remember.
Big fat nasty guy. I want to know what game you were watching me play. He was
a creepy guy, and he was chasing this girl, and she was in a...
Oh, Sherry Birkin. Yeah. You're talking about the Resident Evil 2 remake, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I remember, basically. So why don't we then
Cece gets offended by playing Donkey Kong. It scares her, so I doubt she'll ever play the Resident Evil series.
Hey, those fish are scary, alright? I don't care what you say.
Oh, God, okay. So starting with number 10, Steven, if you want to start with yours.
All right, well, my number 10 was Resident Evil 6. I know this one gets a lot of flack in the Resident Evil community for being the worst one. I kind of disagree. I think that's 5, but that's a point for another time. But I picked Resident Evil 6. It is arguably an iffy game, mechanically wise. But I do appreciate what it tried to do to add some new elements to the series at the time. At the time, Resident Evil had kind of fallen into this very action-oriented slump. And you see that a lot with 6, but it also tried to reintroduce some horror elements, particularly in Leon's campaign.
Yeah, I pretty much for number 10 also had Resident Evil 6. I liked how it took several main characters from the franchise and kind of told intertwining stories amongst them in this game. Mm-hmm. However, I did not like the zero replayability of it. Once you pretty much played it through, you're like, okay, I played Resident Evil 6. I don't have to ever play this game again. I rated it under Resident Evil 5, because spoiler alert, that's my number 9. Because at least with Resident Evil 5, it had co-playability. One player could play Chris Redfield, one player could play Sheva, I believe her name was. And Resident Evil 6 tried to introduce those same elements without having the actual co-op ability, and it felt very weak, and the AI felt very dumb to me. So I was just like, yeah, I'm not giving it that number 9 spot.
Yeah. If I might interject real quick, while we're still on the topic of Resident Evil 6, I really loved the way they treated Chris's character, because you kind of see his arc through the series. He's really only one of the characters in the series that kind of has this arc, and I personally hope he goes full bad in Resident Evil 8 because after seeing him in 6, you can see that's clearly where he's heading, especially after he loses another partner.
Yeah, he went down that alcoholic route in Resident Evil 6, and he was very just beat up from all the years of trying to bring down Umbrella and realizing, hey, that's a freaking 100-headed Hydra that is just not going down. So if you can't beat him, kind of join him. I personally would like to see him go bad, but not in the same way Jill did, because, I mean, it's only downhill from having to punch a boulder.
Oh man, okay. You guys can like kind of keep going. I mean, what I think is maybe not, unless you want me to kind of introduce each number, you could kind of follow through and just kind of be more fluid if you'd like to kind of just, because you said you're gonna, since he went first, you'll go first on the next one kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said before, my number 9 was Resident Evil 5. So where do I go with this game about what I don't like? Punching boulders is one. If you guys think I'm joking, there is literally an action sequence in the game in which Chris Redfield literally punches a boulder to move it during a boss fight in the middle of a volcano.
What? You can't do that in real life, Teddy?
I mean, I've tried to punch a boulder, and all I've walked away with was some very bloody knuckles. It did not help me defeat a boss in a volcano, so I'm a little suspect on the plausibility of that one. I loved, honestly, though, I will give the list of what I like about it better. I like the replayability, like I said before. I like the introduction of not just the T virus, but the Las Plagas virus, which was in it, which is where the centipedes come out of their mouths in this series, because it added a new kick to the very formulaic point of, ooh, T virus, zombies. Mm-hmm. It was more like it diverged from like George A. Romero returning Living Dead into more of the like African or
Invasion of the Body
style,
Snatchers.
Yeah, or the more voodoo type of zombies, where it was like they were still moving about, they still seemed like somewhat normal, and then they, boom, hit you, and they're a zombie. I like that change from 5. So that was very nice to see that. I know they started to do it in 4, but like the 5, you barely heard about the T virus. Mm-hmm. And in Resident Evil 4, correct me if I'm wrong, they still talked about Umbrella at least a little bit, and not like their shadow organization at that point.
All right. Well, my number 9 is, this may be a point of argument, but my number 9 is the Resident Evil 2 remake. I loved the remake. I thought it was super fun to play. I like a lot of the changes that they made in it in comparison to the original. Though my biggest problem with it is there is no A and B scenario. For those of you who haven't played the original 2, that you have an A scenario depending on who you play first, and then you have a B scenario, and whoever you play first, it's different for the next campaign. So say you play Claire campaign A, the choices you make in that playthrough affects when you play the Leon B campaign, and it all kind of flows into one story. With the remake, it didn't so much do that. It was mainly the same story over again, except Claire was replaced with Leon and vice versa. So it was very disjointed, and I really didn't like that.
But you didn't like Mr. X just randomly popping up and scaring the crap out of you?
I mean, if I'm gonna have some hulking bald guy chase me all night, he at least has to buy me dinner first.
Yeah, that's definitely something he should do. Um, yeah, honestly, I'm very shocked about that. Like, I figured you would have been like one of the people that would have been like on the hype train for the Resident Evil 2 remake because it goes back to its heart roots. So I'm a little shooketh about that one.
Uh, yeah, I can see that. Don't get me wrong, I say again, I do love the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I do go back to it often. I just feel it's a step back, particularly from the remake made in 2002 of the original game. I'll get into that later because that's on my list. But I feel like Resident Evil 2 remake took a lot of things out and was a lesser remake in comparison to the 2002 remake of the first one. All right then. Well, since we're done with that topic. Oh, wait. Okay.
You guys good?
Yeah, I thought my
It's-
camera was off. My bad.
You're
It's-
okay.
So my number eight was Resident Evil 4. This even when I first played it, when I was a wee lad, I had issues with it. It was so different from the series up to then. You had the over the shoulder camera angle. You had these kind of invasion of the body snatcher villains with this parasite in them. There was no sign or very little sign of Umbrella or the T virus or any of its derivatives. And it just threw me through a loop. And I've kind of grown an appreciation for it over the years, but it has a very awkward place in my heart.
Yeah, I actually, for my number 8, also put Resident Evil 4. What do I hate about this game? Everything. The President's Daughter, awful. Killed me so many times. The bulky, uncomfortable controls of it, and I'm not talking about the Switch version. The Switch version it doesn't exist to me, because its controllers were so bad, it made a bad game worse. Even on the PlayStation 4, I get where they were trying to go, where they were trying to maybe add like the third-person aspect of it, because they didn't want it to become a first-person shooter, because then it would just become House of the Dead, basically at that point. Which also, for people who don't know, had a shadow organization that released these zombies, and you have to shoot your way out of them. Very generic zombie shoot 'em type game that came out around the same time. I think it was first released on the Dreamcast. But they went with the third person aspect of it. They didn't do a good job on this one. Right before this, they had the Resident Evil Outbreak games, which proved that you could take something that was older and spice it up and give new life to it, with the online play aspect of it. This game just didn't really offer anything new outside of one cool boss. Like, he had a chainsaw. Wow. You know, like, comparatively to like Nemesis or the G unit, aka William Birkin, from Resident Evil 2, or even the Tyrant from Resident Evil 1. It was just a very weak villain, along with the President's Daughter, who I couldn't stand, and just a general weak reasoning behind what was going on in the first place just ultimately killed this game for me. I wanted to rate it lower, but Chris punched a boulder, and Resident Evil 6 was literally the worst game in the franchise, so I had to give it my number 8 spot. but if I could give that thing a minus 1,000 on a Metacritic score, I definitely would.
No, yeah, I totally agree, Teddy. I will probably have uh people storming outside of my window tonight in protest. But I think Resident Evil 4 is overrated. I do acknowledge its impact on the video game industry, but it just didn't hit it for me, you know. Uh, and I agree with you. The enemies, when compared to enemies from previous titles such as Birkin or the Tyrant or Alexia Ashford, they seemed lacking. The only saving grace for that with me is Ada Wong was in it. Um, and of course, as a gay boy who is a horror fanatic, I was obsessed with Ada Wong in the second. And of course, Albert Wesker's return from Code Veronica.
Yeah, I love me some Ada Wong. She was one of the best things about Resident Evil 2, to be quite fair. I thought she was, to put it in a PG way, like growing up, I thought she was like the hottest thing ever, so I had like a bunch of fan art of her. But then Resident Evil 3 came out, and I'm like, Ada who? We got Jill in like a tube top, a short skirt, and like a back brace. That's like my new like aesthetic.
Yeah, like, and then Jill Valentine in the 3 remake. Say what you want about that game, but what they did with her character times is fantastic. She's a badass. She's right up there with, like, I would say Ripley from Alien.
Yeah, so we're on number 7. So for this one, I might get a little flack for this, but I put for my number 7 Resident Evil Code Veronica. And the reason why I put Resident Evil Code Veronica in this spot is I loved Claire, so it wasn't her, honestly, and I liked the split aspect between her campaign and Chris's that kind of flowed into one another. Plus Wesker came back. That was pretty dope. However, I'm if you give me characters I have to work around or have to work with or have to play with, make them likable. And I hated Steve. He was the worst. Like right up there with the President's Daughter. He was very whiny through it, even in the book. Because I read most of the Resident Evil books growing up by, I think it's S.D. Perry, right, Steven?
You are correct, yes.
So, I absolutely hated Steve. Plus, like, Wesker at that point in time when he just showed up out of nowhere. There wasn't signs of Wesker ever coming back in any games that were leading up to it. It was, boom, Albert Wesker's back after he just gets, absolutely destroyed by the Tyrant in the first game. And then now he's like some sort of like Steve Winters, Bucky, Barnes super soldier that like is doing like Matrix moves to like dodge bullets and stuff like that. That to me was very like I said, I did like the Chris and Claire aspect of it because that's why her whole motivation to going into Raccoon City in the events of Resident Evil 2. So it was very nice to see the resolution of that. And Claire being a bit of a badass trying to run down Umbrella Corp's main like facility. Like she was just like, I'm gonna go straight for the neck. So I thought like aspects of that were cool, but ultimately Steve and like the nonsenseness that personally I did not like Wesker coming back in that context. So yeah, that's why I listed it at number 7. Yeah, I don't know what else I could say more on that.
Okay. I'll reserve what I have to say about Code Veronica because, spoiler alert, it's later on in my list as well. My number 7 was Resident Evil 7. So it kind of had that same effect on me as Resident Evil 4 did. It's over Resident Evil 4 though because I find it a much more competent game. And it brings back horror into the forefront of the series. It has this very Texas Chainsaw kind of feel to it, and you can't really kill the enemies. You can maybe stun them for a little bit, like the Bakers are a fantastic set of villains, and probably one of the most iconic in modern Resident Evil lore. There's not a lot I disliked about it. The biggest thing was probably it kind of distancing itself from the core lore of it until Not a Hero DLC, which brings back Chris Redfield. But yeah, that's all I have to say. So, I believe that brings us to our number 6. So I believe it's my turn to.
Yeah, it's your go.
Okay. So for number 6, I picked Revelations 1. I don't believe you've played it, Teddy. Have you?
So I have played both Revelations Episode 1 and Episode 2. I could not stand either of them, but they did give a new, like, I don't know. I would say that I liked and hated it for the exact same reason. They tried something new with it, mainly for the 3DS, which was the functionality of scanning stuff, because it was meant to be aimed around the fact that the DSi during that time and the 3DS had their cameras, so it was like an added gimmick, extra functionality that they had in which you would scan things to get a bit more lore similar to the Metroid Prime series. However, the difference between the Resident Evil Revelation games and why I don't like them and did not include them on my list, unlike the Metroid Prime series, was it made sense for you to go around scanning stuff in Metroid. You were on an alien hostile planet and you need to take as much research as you could. Resident Evil made no fucking sense with it. It did not have like that, oh, we need to learn the lore about the zombies. With the Resident Evil series, the way that they always built up was, if you want to know a bit more, there's fan art, or there's like a concept art for these creatures. Here's a little explanation about these creatures, like a little like a synopsis about like features they have.
Like the in-game files.
Yeah, exactly. The things you could unlock, by playing it multiple times or whatever, if you were into that type of thing. So, like, the scanning feature of it, just, like, I thought it was innovative, in which they tried to take acts, or try to make use of a gimmick that was for the system it was on. But I hated it because the way that was implemented made absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry. That was your ranking and I checked it.
No, I absolutely can see where you're coming from. I was talking to my roommate the other day about the Revelations games, and he was like, yeah, I can't play it because it's too arcadey. And I think that comes from the fact that it is very episodic. And I don't particularly care about that myself. I believe it started most prominently this kind of episodic chapter storytelling in 4, and I never really liked it. I'm more of a Resident Evil purist. But what I liked about 1 is it came out during a time, it came out after 6. So it was kind of a return to form, like an informal return to form to horror as the forefront of the series. And it brought with it a lot of interesting concepts with it. You have an infected cruise ship out in the middle of nowhere with all of these infected passengers who turn into these mutant fish people out on the high sea. You have this ridiculous city that was attacked by terrorists who Terra is like out the first water city in the universe, maintained by satellites reflecting the sun's beams. Like, it has these crazy concepts in it that could really only work in a Resident Evil game. There are parts of it that I didn't like. Most notably how janky the controls could be, especially when you're swimming underwater. And I personally believe that the final boss should have been located somewhere differently. In the game, it takes place in a sunken cruise ship. But in my head, I would have placed it in the ruins of Terra Grigia, the city that was destroyed by terrorists. I feel like it would have given the story more of a complete circle kind of feel, but I digress. But I will turn it back over to you, Teddy.
So for my number 6, I know it's gonna seem like I'm absolutely dumpstering on the concept of like not playing characters that are like your main characters or having to rely on a sidekick. But my number 6 is Resident Evil 0. So Resident Evil 0 was the follow-up game due to much hype, critical acclaim of the original Resident Evil remake, which at that time only came out on the GameCube. And it was a way to explain how the events, or the start of the events of Resident Evil 1 take place. For a lot of people who don't know, Resident Evil 1 takes place in the middle of a woods called the Arklay Mountains at a facility known as the Spencer Estate or Spencer Mansion if you've watched the movies. Resident Evil 0 takes place because there was 2 teams that were sent out to investigate this manor. There was the Bravo team, and then there was the Alpha team. Alpha team was Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, their munitions expert, Barry, their pilot, Brad Vickers. Now, the Bravo team was a character that you come across in Resident Evil 1, Rebecca Chambers. She was a medic. She was the medic for Bravo team. And this is basically what happens to her team, because spoiler alert, in Resident Evil 1, most of them are dead. They are found in various places throughout the Spencer Estate in Resident Evil 1. So this was a way to kind of give their like deaths meaning. And it introduced a new character who becomes your co-op person, and his name is, it starts with a B. I'm drawing a blank. I want to say Barry, but it's not Barry. Billy. Billy. That's what was Billy. And Billy, who he was a former Marine who was essentially being put to death in the military because he was pinned in a friendly fire incident that he did not do. So they go to a Bravo team goes to investigate. I liked it. I thought the limiting it to like a set location at first in a very linear kind of way, very back and forth. So you had to go from like one place, like almost to the other end of like it. Basically, it takes place on a train. For the first part of the game, I liked that it kept the survival horror aspect of it. I liked that you could switch actively between who you were using. However, that was a double-edged sword, because the one you were not actively using had the dumbest fucking AI. And when I say the dumbest AI, I mean the dumbest. There is one part of the game where you literally are timed to go rescue that partner, because if you don't, they die. And if one of them dies, guess what? Game over. Doesn't matter if the other person survived and could actually still carry on the story, technically. But no, they would throw themselves in enemies' ways and constantly get attacked. They would put themselves like near fire, so they would take fire damage. Like, it was just annoying. And I want to say, if you were going to go with a main character that you were going to base around, yes, of course it made sense that they did Rebecca because she was the only one alive at the end of the Spencer events that took place in Resident Evil 1. But she was just not threatening, and this girl was trying to throw around her weight as if she was like this like big burly cop dude. She's like, you better stop right now, and she's like this like 90-pound soaking wet maybe girl, and the person she's trying to do it, Billy, he's like, I don't know, like 180, 200 pounds, jacked completely because, you know, he was in the military. And she's just trying to throw around her authority for, like, most of this. And she's like, I'm not going to let you get away because you're a killer. And it was just, like, it was very annoying. That's ultimately what kind of made it, like, a mid-tier game for me because I loved aspects of it. I liked that it kept on the hype train of the Resident Evil remake and how it kept it really... it almost supplements Resident Evil 0, or Resident Evil 1. It feels like in modern day times it would be a DLC. Like it didn't feel like a whole game. It could have been an episode you unlocked for, say, I don't know, if the PS4 had like Resident Evil 0 on it, or Resident Evil 1, I keep saying Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1 on it, as like a game, and you had to unlock it similar to the one for Resident Evil 0 in which Chris Redfield comes back. It would feel better as that than it was like $40 at the time for essentially an add-on or a DLC for it. Like during that time, like it took forever to get my mom to buy this game because I was like 15, 16 at the time. And fun fact, because my mom got so used to watching me play it, she remembered where all the items are. So when she would be sitting down after she'd come home from work, and I'd just be playing it, she goes, oh yeah, don't forget that shotgun ammo that's there, or make sure you shoot this barrel because someone's going to show up. And my mom does not play games. She did not whatsoever. So like it was always funny to see her come home and know more about a Resident Evil game at that time than me. It was very badass for my mom. So like I have like that nostalgia towards it too.
Yeah. Stop telling me what to do, Mom. God. Yeah, I agree with you. Resident Evil 0 is a mixed bag for me too, Teddy. I did like what they tried to do. I love that they kept survival horror in the forefront of it. I love Billy as a character. He's one of probably the most badass characters in the series. Of course, he doesn't punch boulders, but I mean, not everyone could be Chris Redfield. But I really hope that Capcom, if you're listening to this, to please bring him back. I would like to see what happened to him.
Yeah, that's like absolutely bullshit. They're like, haha, you survived. Bye now. Yeah, you survived a zombie apocalypse and you have no clue what the fuck's going on. So bye. Like, does he make it out of the city? Does he, like, not get eaten by the dogs that are in the woods? Who fucking knows? We don't care because, you know, we're Capcom. Fuck us, I guess. About Revelations. But the reason why I brought that up is because this is where our lists divert.
Okay.
He had the Resident Evil Revelations games, and I lumped the Resident Evil Outbreak games together. So for my number 5, it is the Resident Evil Outbreak games. And the reason why, some people may ask, why did I lump 2 games together? And it's because Resident Evil Outbreak and Outbreak File 2 are they're Resident Evil's first attempt at being episodic. But the scenarios are the same characters. They are technically a continuation of each other, but there's no added extra gameplay in it. So like these would be, again, like DLC. If you downloaded them, you know, you would buy, hey, this episode pack or this episode pack or this episode pack. So that's why I bundled them together. Resident Evil Outbreak, though, I personally felt like it is the perfect embodiment of, like, what I want from co-opability of Resident Evil. What I mean by that is, with Resident Evil Outbreak, its whole premise, its whole gimmick, its whole balance is all around multiplayers. And multiplayers being independent of each other. Meaning if one person leaves the room, everybody's not dragged through that TV or that door opening loading screen, and they could just go about what they're doing in whatever areas they were at. And the reason why they built their gameplay function around this is because Capcom was trying to utilize at that time the failing PlayStation 2 network system. I absolutely love the network system for the PlayStation 2. I thought it was very, I wouldn't say ahead of its time, because Dreamcast had been the first ever system to really bridge that gap successfully between net play and online play. So I personally liked that they used that feature within it, and the characters, they were just normal people within Raccoon City, and it gave that thought of, really of the whole, what would you do if a zombie outbreak happened? Regardless of where you were at, would you know that you would survive? And that was the entire premise of the game, and that's why I loved it. I had some gripes about it being single player and still requiring that net play aspect of it, because herding those survivors around was like, trying to herd cats. It was very bad, and they would drop items that you importantly need, and sometimes could actually prevent you from completing the scenario you were in just by being stupid. So it was better than Resident Evil 0 because it had that aspect of, well, I could just take that away and it could be like my friends playing with me. There could be 4 of us playing, versus Rebecca Chambers just constantly getting attacked in a train that is easily avoidable. So my number 4, I guess, since we're just kind of steamrolling into it now, and I will get a lot of flack for this, is my number 4 is Resident Evil 1, or the OG Resident Evil. And the reason why I put it at number 4 is because I felt between the two, I kind of compare the remake as well as the original game. The first one was absolutely game-breaking. Nobody had seen something like that before. Many people have tried to recreate that. Silent Hill tried to recreate it. Alone in the Dark tried to recreate it. Parasite Eve tried to recreate it. There were so many people that tried to recreate this. So, I give it my top 4 because of that. However, replaying it as an adult, the remake patches up so many holes that the first game had, without needing to diverge into the books and being introduced to a character named Trent, who Steven will tell you that he hates his entire existence in the franchise. But Resident Evil...
I do.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, Trent, he and I will debate many hours on the necessity of Trent's character within the Resident Evil books. But I digress. I liked... it was Baby's first survival horror game. I remember it coming out and my dad being like, yeah, we'll get it for you. And my mom was like, absolutely not. It was a great game. It had free roamability where you could, investigate stuff. And if you investigated too far, or if you didn't prepare well enough, then you'd die. And I like that aspect of it and its OG-ness. And the remake has like I said, it has all of the things that I loved about it from the original, but it fills in plot holes. It makes what happens in that event seem more impactful and more lasting, and it deserves its I want to say it deserves its spots in the annals of game history for like how much it impacted, especially with the remake. It brought in an entire new wave of Resident Evil fans that if we did not have them, we probably would not have gotten Resident Evil 7 or the Resident Evil remake games, because a lot of them started with 0 and the remake. So it was nice. Yeah, it definitely earned its spot in my top 4.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question that the OG Resident Evil had a significant impact on gaming and the survival horror genre. But going off of that, my number 4, which I kind of got a bit rambunctious about, is Code Veronica. We seem to have different viewpoints of this, Teddy. I realize that a majority of my fondness for this game comes from nostalgia. I played it, I believe, in middle school with my cousin, and I have really fond memories of that. But I also love the fact that Claire is back and Chris is back. They're both in the same game. You never really see that again. I love the fact that Wesker came back. Because when I was playing it with my cousin, the scene where he is reintroduced plays, and I'm like, oh my god, that's Wesker from the first game. And I was like, how? And then it just became a search of going back through the websites, finding the videos that explained how he's still alive, why he's still alive, and it really showing the mastermind that Albert Wesker was in the series. And of course, I do love the Ashford twins, particularly Alexia Ashford. I thought it was really interesting of the game where actually Alfred, who was dressing up and had kind of this alternate personality that he was exhibiting. And then towards the end of the game, you're like, oh no, the real Alexia Ashford is back and ready to mess up Chris and Claire's day. So that's that on 4. So my number 3 is this is another thing that Teddy and I kind of disagree on, is he, when we were talking about making these lists, he said he was going to put the remakes and the originals together as one unit, correct, Teddy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree, because I feel like if you play Resident Evil 2 Remake, you're going to have a completely different experience playing the original. And that kind of goes for 3 and 3 Remake and the first game and the remake of the first game. Anyway, my number 3 game would be Resident Evil 3, the original game. It introduced probably the most iconic villain in the entire series, Nemesis, who was absolutely terrifying. Even for a PS1 game, he stalked the hell out of you before Mr. X did in Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I would argue that he's even more terrifying than Mr. X was in 2 Remake. He darted after you. Putting him down was a chore. I played it recently, and when
he has a rocket launcher too.
Yeah, he has a rocket launcher, of course. But I was replaying it recently, and when you hear that door slam sound in the background and just hear him roar stars, I was peeing myself. So yeah, that's my number 3.
Yeah, I will get into Resident Evil 3 very, very, very shortly. I'm gonna add Resident Evil 3 and the remake together. Personally, I liked both of them equally for the exact same reasons. But for my number 3, again, where Steven and I absolutely diverge. I put the Resident Evil 7 game. And the reason why I put the Resident Evil 7 game is because it was that return to form. It was the return to survival horror. And you did get the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, freaking nasty hillbillies kidnap somebody and torture them kind of feel to it. I loved it. The enemies in it were fantastic. The bosses, the family themselves were fantastic. Like the first boss fight that you have, you're in a garage and like you could have the option to get in a car, ram it into the boss, and he's still kicking. Like that garage is on fire. There's like a car blown up in the middle of it, and he's still going after you. The mom in it was great because she had like a belly and her like womb area was full of all these like swirling bugs, and it was very scary, very gruesome, very horrific, and it was everything that I wanted in a Resident Evil remake game, or Resident Evil reboot as they were framing it for quite some time. I also loved like it was very, I want to say it was very gritty. It was very raw. It went there. Like you had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel of it. You had the whole I want to say the Ring feel of it, where like, you know, this entity would pop up every so often, and it made you wonder what you were seeing was real or not. Which was great because it was paired eventually with the VR aspect of it. So it even made more sense because it made you feel claustrophobic as the game is supposed to make you feel. So yeah, that's why I personally rated it that high. I didn't think the controllers were clunky. The puzzles were great. The bosses were fantastic. And I kind of did not put it as number 2 because I originally wanted to put it as my number 2. And the reason why I didn't was because without DLC, you don't see really any main franchise characters. So I had to hit it for that because it's not a Resident Evil game unless it's got ties to the other one. No ties to Umbrella really for a long time without the DLC. No ties to Chris or any of the original survivors. So that's why I had to dock it down on that one.
All right, yeah, I could really understand that, yeah. So for my number 2, I picked the original Resident Evil 2. For this one, it was one of the perfect Resident Evil games because it took everything from the original Resident Evil and built upon it. You have new mechanics like the quick turn. You have the A and B scenarios that I was talking about before. You have William Birkin, who is important not only for lore reasons, but you have this villain that keeps changing and morphing each time you see him into this grotesque monstrosity. And it's just a great game. It has fantastic music, fantastic atmosphere, and I really dig it.
Yeah, for my number 2, I did the exact same. I put the Resident Evil 2 game. So I compared I tend to put Resident Evil's originals as well as their remakes together. Mainly because, one, we're going to be here all night if we split them separately and wanted to go down the entire list of like Resident Evil games in their full ranking. But Resident Evil 2, like the remake or the original game, like Steven said, took the originals, made them better. I like the A and B aspect of it as well. It gave us a lot of good lore, although I will say, unpopular opinion, Leon Kennedy, super overrated. Better characters in the franchise got so much less love and respect than Leon S. Kennedy did. And he was a rookie cop. He was a bumbling little baby at the beginning of Resident Evil 2, but the progression of the series, he becomes, Mr. Secret Service man, Mr. James Bond, can stop the zombies. No, to me that was bullshit. I felt Claire was the much stronger character in the game. She had much more motivation to be there, much more heated motivation to take down Umbrella, because not only did she watch the effects of what happened in the game happen around her, she also saw the effects of Umbrella and how, after the events of Resident Evil 1, Umbrella turned full attack mode on the Bravo or the Alpha Team surviving members, which were Barry, Jill, and Chris, and Brad. But we don't talk about Brad Vickers, and I'll get to that just shortly. But he was just a babyface. Like, to build this entire franchise around him, they heavily failed to capitalize on what I consider, and the same mistake happened with Jill, was the massive female empowerment that came through the Resident Evil series. All of their females are super strong, with the exception of Rebecca Chambers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Rebecca Chambers is a lover, not a fighter. She's a medic, she's a medic, damn it, Jim. So I can't hold her hold it against her. But Jill, Claire, Ada Wong, they were just powerful women, and I felt Resident Evil and Capcom in general failed to capitalize on that, because they pushed Leon Kennedy to the moon. But Mr. X busting through walls, absolutely, as an adult, I have not jumped in a long time, except for the time before that, which was when I saw It Chapter 1, and that was a jump scare that got me. But Mr. X made that game, the remake, made it so much anxiety-inducing. Because in Resident Evil 2's remake, you can hear his footsteps all throughout the police station. Mm-hmm. So if he was near you, you knew it. And guess what? Save points, they didn't make you safe, because with the very exception of one room or two rooms, he followed you into every single room of that police station. And you still had to complete puzzles. You had to still know where items were. When he got around you, you either had to run and keep running and lose him briefly, or you had to try to fight him and try to kill him, and that was very hard because you could not kill Mr. X. You could unlock the unlimited infinite ammo rocket launcher and shoot him, and 3 seconds later, he is going to get back up and resume chasing you, because he is what is called a pursuer. And it was just so anxious, and I'm talking as an adult. I have anxiety to begin with, but not in a long time has a game caused me anxiety of impending doom. So that's why I was like, oh no, it has to go on the list. And plus, you had two baddies in that game. Resident Evil 2, the original one, yes, Mr. X was there, but he was kind of an afterthought. In the remake, they had the two baddies because there were two characters. And it felt that they were both equally, prevalent in the series. There was no afterthought, and actually, at one point in time in that game, those two actually cross each other's paths, and we find out who is the bigger baddie because William Birkin shish kebabs Mr. X in an elevator, which was fantastic to see. So it was just overall perfect game for me. My number one on the list is the best perfect game though. So for me, I know he listed it as his number 3, but for me, my number one pick is Resident Evil 3. Nemesis was the guy. Jill Valentine was the girl. Like, you could not have had a better thing about it. They took aspects of Resident Evil 2 and they did the impossible. They improved on it. They said, well, yeah, Mr. X was there, but what if Mr. X had the ability to show up whenever he wanted? What if Mr. X had a rocket launcher? What if Mr. X, instead of just silently thumping towards you, screamed your unit's name? And it was fantastic. And 3's remake, say all the haters can say what they want about like how short it felt. I hate to tell those guys, guess what? Resident Evil 3 was short to begin with. As a matter of fact, at one point in time in my childhood, I sped ran and actually had a record for the original Resident Evil 3 game because I loved it so much. Every time I played it, it had new story because it had various different stories. It could throw at you different scenarios without even you knowing it. So you would go to an area thinking that an item was going to be there, and it may or may not be. So it made it very hard to be a speedrunner. But I loved it so much that I just powered through it. I learned how to manipulate in that game to make it to my advantage. And the Resident Evil 3 remake, let's talk about that. That game was great. Nemesis was much more imposing. He was huge. This man had a flamethrower. This man had a rocket launcher. They gave him also the Gatling gun, which was introduced in the abysmal Resident Evil movie games, which, spoiler alert, Cece's going to get to in very shortly.
Yeah, he was a unit.
I loved it. He was. They took how imposing he was to begin with, and they made it more imposing. This guy showed up in apartment buildings. He didn't give a damn. He showed up at freaking a gas station. He didn't give a damn. He chased you into a power plant. Like, this dude chased you into the sewer dumps. Like, this guy chased, like, you everywhere, and you could not get away from him. You go to a clock tower, he shows up. You go to the police station, he shows up. There was nowhere this dude did not go. And I think, like, that was what really cemented me getting into Resident Evil, because I had played 1 growing up. I played 2 growing up. But it wasn't until Resident Evil 3 that it became really sacred and dear into my heart, until Resident Evil 3. And it was because of Jill and Nemesis. Plus, we got the sexy Carlos Oliveira. I almost forgot to mention him. But it was everything I wanted in a game. It made me scared. It made me panic. It made me want to get out of there. And it made me want to survive. And that's why it's my number 1 pick.
Absolutely, Teddy. Say what you want about the remake. It was exceedingly fun to play over and over again. I do have issues with it, but that might be a different time. But anyway, my number 1 for my favorite Resident Evil has to be the 2002, remake of the first game, or Resident Evil Rebirth as it's called. I would go on record arguing that it is the best remake ever made. It takes everything that was in the original without exception, and it just builds upon it. You have the original enemies, but they kind of rework them in such a way where they become even more imposing. So, for example, you have, yeah, and then the Neptune, the shark, and the original PS1 game is just a shark just nipping at your ankles. And then in the remake, it's frickin' Jaws threatening to swallow you whole. You have the introduction of new enemies. You have the Crimson Heads, which are zombies that are reanimated after you kill them if you don't decapitate them or burn them. You have Lisa Trevor, who is terrifying on her own, but also has very significant lore implications. And it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I would be remiss to put it anywhere else but number 1 on my list.
Yeah, that's why I went with number 3, because of my emotional attachment to it. Like, I don't think... I'm very hard-pressed to say there'd be another game that I would fall in love with as much as that game.
All right. Thank you guys so much for that. I wish I could, like, enjoy it more, because I just don't play games, but it's okay. That's why I invited you guys here. You're the experts.
I don't know about experts.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Like, you're the two people I knew, that love these games and this franchise more than anybody I know, so I had to have you guys on. So, I was challenged to at least give it a chance in some ways. And you know me, I'm a big movie person. So, I did go ahead and watch the first film. So, essentially, in the first film, you have the T-virus... If the double helix bottle breaks, right, and it becomes airborne, correct? So you've got that going on. This lab is like flooding, and like people are dying from the gas and all that. That's like the beginning. That's like the cold open of the movie. The coolest part too is the lady. You don't see it; it's an off-screen kill, but the lady's head going through the elevator, which is pretty cool. So that's pretty much the cold open. Again, you got to see it. I'm sure most of you have. This came out in 2002. Stars Mila Jovovich, which I'm wanting to call her Lilu the whole time I'm watching this, because I saw fucking Fifth Element a lot earlier than I watched this. This was my first time ever watching it. So, but next scene basically goes into her character's name, which is Alice. She's concussed, or just like whatever, right? She's asleep. She wakes up not knowing what the hell's going on, where she's at. I don't want to go into it too far, but basically she gets attacked after a moment. Actually, there was a guy trying to save her, supposedly, and then, like, what is it, UBCS is what you said? They came in and they started, like, grabbing them and taking them in for... Yeah, kind of, like, taking them in, and she's still, like, not really remembering what's going on. She starts to see some flashbacks, starting to kind of remember who she is. They move forward with the group here. Guys, gotta fill me in a little bit if I'm off. I have the Wikipedia up, so I'm trying to kind of go forward. I kind of stopped taking notes after that time. Essentially, they meet up with the AI, which is the Red Queen. She's in the form of a little girl, and I liked her because I thought she was interesting. You're all going to die down here. I thought that was fun. Oh God, there's just, I don't know, if somebody could kind of fill me in a little bit more on how the action kind of progresses without saying too much, just to kind of get me to the next scene.
So, after they release the Red Queen, basically what happens is it triggers a failsafe that they did not realize was there.
Oh, the one room with all the, like, lasers?
The lasers, yeah.
Which was a really cool scene because, I like gory stuff. I mean, the most of it was CGI in this movie, which... not usually a big fan of, but my favorite kill was the one that kind of turned into like a fence and kind of went through the one guy and like chopped him up in all different pieces.
Yeah, the laser grid.
Yeah, so that was really fun. I liked that. The movie overall, though, is just a lot of like, I was telling Teddy, I was like, it's so, trying to be so edgy. But, like, I gotta remember what year it was. Steve's laughing. But you gotta remember, like, this came out in 2002, so, like, yeah, that was when everyone was trying to be edgy. So
the early 2000s edgelord.
Yes, like
with the Marilyn Manson soundtrack in the background.
I know, right? Like, I remember, like, the ending credits are playing freaking "My Plague" by Slipknot, which is like one of my favorite songs. That, like, I grew up on that, But basically, it continues forward. They're just basically trying to Well, actually, it goes to the scene kind of, I think, a little bit later than when Michelle Rodriguez's character gets bit by one of the infected people.
Yeah,
she's a
not long
trooper.
after.
Yeah, she's a trooper, man. It gets to the point, though, where they're all trying to kind of get out of there, like, without getting bit or, like, attacked by these people that are now zombies. You have the zombie dogs, which are one of my favorite things. I think they were so cute, even though they were all gross and, like, creepy.
Cece's gonna die. Cece's gonna die by a zombie dog. She's gonna be like, ooh, doggo, and it's gonna rip her throat out, and it's gonna be great.
What a way to go.
Right? I thought they were so cute. Even the one with his jaw, like, hanging out or whatever, I like too. But, so you have them, you have, like, the people that are zombified. You've got, like, a lot going on, really. She's still kind of remembering things throughout. I think she eventually realizes, like, what she was gonna be a traitor in a way.
Yeah, she was trying to take down Umbrella. Basically, for anybody who didn't watch the movie, Alice she's a double agent. She's working with somebody who was on she was the inside person for some reporters who were looking for dirt on the Umbrella Corporation, and she was one of the guardians of, like, an entrance to their research lab. And she was like, I can get you access codes, I can get you, in there, but I'm going to want something from you. And it's basically like, just take those bastards down. They never really go into, like, her motivation on what leads up to that at first. Like, why was she a double agent or anything like that? But, yeah, they do mention that, like, she's there to try to take them down.
Yeah. We do get to the part where basically they're trying to activate the Red Queen so they can find an exit. They rig a remote shutdown, essentially, so they escape through the maintenance tunnels, zombies attacking, and it does say a reanimated JD bites Rain before she then shoots him dead.
Yeah, that's Michelle Rodriguez's character.
Oh, okay, so I already said that. So then...
Yeah, JD was the cocky guy who was always flirting with Michelle, and he's like,
gotcha.
Are you jumpy, and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so Alice essentially remembers that there is an antivirus. So they're trying to now get into the lab so they can find that because one of their members is bit. Plus they're also just trying to, like, have it, so just in case. Let's see, so it's apparently... It got stolen, so they're trying to find it. What's his name? Spence, I guess. He gets bit.
Yeah, so Spence is, for many people who don't know, this is the nod that the first movie did to the original game. In the movie, he owns a mansion, and his name is Spence, which is short for Spencer. Which leads you to, if you dig a little deeper into the lore that is Resident Evil, you would realize it's the Spencer estate or the Spencer Manor that I had mentioned before.
Yep. So he finally gets to the antivirus. He's sitting there getting his arm ready to inject it, and all of a sudden he says something, and a licker comes through and kills him.
I've been a very bad girl. The Red Queen, she drops that line. She's like, I've been a very bad girl. I released this bioweapon because fuck you guys.
Yep. So there's a power outage. The lab door opens to reveal that a still alive Kaplan shut down the Red Queen to open the door. The group heads into the train part. Alice does retrieve the antivirus, and she kills Spence before she escapes with the rest of them. She kills him after he's already like a zombie again. He's reanimated.
Fuck that guy either way, though.
Yeah. So Rain and Kaplan do get injected with the antivirus, but the licker is hiding on the train and attacks them. Alice is able to subdue the licker before Matt is attacked by a zombified Rain, because he does get attacked. He shoots Rain dead, and her head hits a button, opening a door, which was a pretty cool scene. So her head falls back and hits the button to open up the door, and it kind of sucks the licker out, and he just falls down the thing, and it kills him. And then at the mansion,
where he was burning.
Yeah.
He burned for like a good 5-6 minutes before he dropped off, and then he burned to death at that point.
Yeah, and then you kind of come to a next scene that's kind of very white and angelic almost looking, but kind of starts to see like these people in like hazmat suits, like they kind of take them out. Matt, they bring them back to the mansion. Matt's wound is mutating. Before Alice can give him the antivirus, the mansion doors burst open. And that's when the Umbrella scientists get them. They subdue Alice and take Matt away, revealing that he is to be put into the Nemesis program. And that the hive is to be reopened for an investigation to the incident. A few minutes later, you see Alice waking up. She rips out her IVs. She's, not really coherent. She's falling all over the place. Eventually, she gets out. She escapes. And you got the end of the scene where she runs out into an abandoned world. Raccoon City is deserted and in ruins. The film ends with her grabbing a shotgun from an abandoned police car and walking through the streets. So it's not something I don't think I would watch the rest of them. It's not something I really enjoy. I'm not so much of an action person. I know it does have obviously horror aspects because I thought some of the kills were really cool. So I may watch some just to see the kills if there's any cool ones in the later films, but it's not something I think I'm going to dive too deep into from here, but I did want to give it at least a chance. There were some things I did like about it. I know it's very different from the games. It's what a lot of people will say because Alice, from what I understand, is not even a character at all in any of the
Nope, she is literally just a creation for this movie.
Yeah. So that's what I think a lot of the game players have a problem with when they saw the movie.
Yeah, she's definitely my biggest gripe about it.
Yeah. Steven, I don't know if you had any thoughts on on this movie at least.
As far as the Resident Evil live actions go, it is arguably the best in the series. That's not saying much.
The second one was
it's
better. I'll disagree. The second one, the one that they had Nemesis in, I thought it was better as a movie, but that's because Nemesis is in it. You slap Nemesis on anything, and I'll watch it or I'll buy it.
The second one's probably my second favorite, but I just have these nostalgic feelings for the first Resident Evil movie.
Can we all just take a moment to sit there and make fun of Mila Jovovich's "Whoa, I know Kung Fu" moment, in which she starts to physically pummel this zombie, and I'm talking she's not hitting anywhere that would kill a zombie. Resident Evil has been, for the most part, brains, they're dead. You hit them with the Tom Savini, shoot them in the head, they're dead. She starts Kung Fu fighting on this guy, punching him in his arms and his throat and stuff, and she manages to kill him. Oh god, that was the worst part of the movie. And even as a kid, I was telling Cece this while we were watching, I had friends that so hated that scene so much. We were at a drive-in. They took a bus to go home because they did not want to finish watching the movie because how much they hated it. And I get not maybe getting the most approval for getting characters' names and rights and stuff like that. And I get Capcom wanting to be selective with who represents their brand or who does adaptations of their work. But there was no reason for Alice. You could have gone, because before this movie came out and before it was ultimately picked up by this writer and director, George A. Romero was actually tapped to be the writer and director for the Resident Evil movie. Because when people think zombie movies, who better than George A. Romero, unless we get into the later of the Dead franchise movies. But he was really gonna make it more towards the game. Now, he took some civil liberties in that, for some reason Chris Redfield had to be, red in his name, so therefore he must have been, Indian, or Native American for the proper terminology. But it was just no reason for her character being introduced. And I hate her character, and I hate how they sidelined so many main characters for her. They sidelined Jill in the second one. They never introduced Leon into the series. They made Claire a sidekick. They made Chris a sidekick. Like, they did the main characters of the franchise so wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. I will say there are some cool nods to the franchise in it. But overall, as a whole, it was as trashy as a Yui Bowl video game adaptation. And if you guys are all horror fans, you guys should know Yui Bowl, because he is the man known for taking video game movies and making them horrifying to see no matter what IP he touches. He's tried Alone in the Dark, he's tried House of the Dead, two main reasons why those franchises are now dead because of Yui Bowl. And I could go on for hours about that man. But ultimately, the Resident Evil movies, because of how they treated the source material that they were supposed to be showing love for, they turned to not Resident Evil. And this is the same Resident Evil problem that it eventually fell into, where it was the more action-oriented versus the survival horror aspect of it. But they turned the Resident Evil franchise, which at that point in time, up into 2002, Resident Evil was purely survival horror. So they turned a survival horror game and movie, they just went pure action with it. It was as bad as action in the first attempt at a Doom movie. It was just like more about shooting and wasting bullets than it was, hey, this is a puzzle we have to fix, which leads us to go to this next puzzle that we have to fix. And that helps us unravel the mystery of what's going on around us. I felt like the motivations behind the characters were very weak. The introduction of Alice was absolutely purely garbage. We did get some cool death scenes. The woman in the elevator was kind of cool. The laser grid is by far my favorite kill in the movie. But like, you don't really like any of the characters. They're just like generic mercenaries that show up.
Yeah, there's no character development in this film, and that's what that was my biggest issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
if it did not have Michelle Rodriguez.
Exactly, I would have hated it. Like, she was the only saving grace in that movie, to be honest with you.
Because it's Michelle Rodriguez. She's a fantastic fucking actor. But, like, nobody else in that. Mila Jovovich was known for, like, Fifth Element and, like, Dazed and Confused at that. But nobody else in that movie was, like, a big name.
That's fine. That's fine if they're not. But the thing is, it's just, like, the rest of the guys were just very generic. I thought one guy was the same guy later on. Like, they both looked similar. Like, it was just, they were very personality-less. And I don't know. That was I think the big reason why I didn't really care for it that much. I like a lot of character development. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll give it I'll give it a 2 out of 5. I just don't think it's going to be something I revisit very often. So, but yeah, I mean, it was worth it, at least trying it out. I did want to talk about one last thing today. Something I actually got to experience. I don't know. I know Teddy didn't. I don't know, Steven. How long have you been going to HHN?
Off and on for about 10 years.
Did you go to 23?
Is that the one with the Resident Evil house in it?
Yeah.
I unfortunately didn't get to go that year.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to see if you had gone, because I know Teddy hadn't, I know Jess hadn't, because we were supposed to talk a little bit about the house, but I have some information on the house. I did get to experience it. Again, it was like me going into something completely blind again, but it was really fun, like, I'm not into the games or this franchise, but, like, to me, just the way Universal does things is so amazing. Like, it doesn't even matter if you're a fan of it or not. You walk into this world, and you're just taken aback right away. I mean, the first scene you walk into is just like Raccoon City, and you see Leon. He's on top of a cop car, and he's shooting zombies, which is pretty cool. Then you gotta go into I think it's like Tony's Pizza or something. But I don't know, just the beginning of this, it was just cool. You just walk right into it. You're like right there, and like everything's just going on around you. You get a zombie and she comes at you a little bit. Some fun facts about this house. It was again in 2013, so HHN 23. It was located in Soundstage 21, right next to Cabin in the Woods, another great house from that year. It's called Resident Evil Escape from Raccoon City. Supposedly it's mainly based off of Resident Evil 2 and 3 is what it's saying here. I'm getting this from the Halloween Horror Nights wiki, by the way. Wanted to credit them. Let's see. So basically the description is, Raccoon City is overrun with Umbrella Corporation's most terrifying experiments, and the only option is complete destruction. You'll need to duck and dodge Lickers, Hunters, and Nemesis himself if you want any chance of escaping Capcom's video game terrors before missiles send everything back to hell. So, it was cool. Like, seeing this from a person's perspective that doesn't really know anything about it, I was just kind of like, I couldn't really stop and look at everything, obviously, because you know how they do the conga line with trying to move people through that damn house. But I did try to take in what I could. I've rewatched it on YouTube a few times just to kind of refresh my memory. Like I said, I mean, you're right in the action as soon as you walk in. You're constantly getting scares from every side, even from up above. I believe Nemesis is up at the top shooting you.
With the machine gun.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know what I really liked, and apparently a lot of the fans didn't like, was the part where it says pause game or something like that. Because apparently they take like a moment where it's supposed to look kind of like you took a break or whatever.
Yeah. I honestly really loved that.
Yeah.
I thought it was really unique. In a haunted house, along with the "You Are Dead" at the end, and how they have the typewriter spotlighted, like save your progress.
Yes. The "You Are Dead" was so cool. I really love that because I was like, it's over already. Like, I was like, it's so cool though. I love how they did that. It made you feel like you were really in the video game. And,
yeah, you didn't survive. You died, like, in the game.
Exactly. And, like, that's perfect for me. I don't think I would have lasted as long as the house did if I tried to play it, though. I would have been dead in, like, the first 2 seconds. But, like, seriously, though, it was great. Let me see. There's some trivia here about it. One of my favorite things is in the pizzeria, there is a picture of Sam Meats from Leave It to Cleaver, who was actually played technically by Mike Aiello. Shout out. And there's a picture of him on the wall, which is great. Cracks me up. Apparently, also, it says, let's see. Universal supposedly did work closely with Capcom to build the sets and costumes as authentic as they could. And also, it says here, though, too, that the many different herbs you can find in the game for health and stuff can be seen in different parts of the house. Which is pretty fun. That's kind of like an Easter egg. It's kind of like something that you know now and you want to go back and kind of like maybe look at the walkthrough and see if you can spot anything. But yeah, like I had a lot of fun with this house. I mean, Teddy, you watched it with me. I know you're a big problem.
Oh my god. Okay, so I didn't want to break this up because I wanted to keep it somewhat positive about the house. The concept for it is really cool. I like how they mashed up technically Resident Evil 2 and 3 because 2 and 3, the events take place during the same time. Specifically, the end of Resident Evil 2 happens at the exact same time as the ending of Resident Evil 3. And it was very nice to see that they went the full, Raccoon City. I will say that I was not a fan of going into Tony's Pizzeria because that is a Resident Evil 3 reference. Personally, when they show Leon outside on the cop car, the place I felt like you should have walked into should have been Kendo's gun shop, which is the place that you essentially run to escape a bunch of zombies in Resident Evil 2. That was Leon's main campaign, is he meets Kendo, the gun shop owner, and he watches Ken get eaten by a bunch of zombies so he can steal his shotgun. That's an event that happens in game. I kid you not.
Yeah.
Is you have the option of saving him or letting his shotgun get killed.
Yeah, could you imagine that walking into Kendo's shop in this haunted house, and it's just some scare actor writhing around on the floor while a bunch of other scare actors are pretending to eat?
That would be great. I think it would be very unique, and it would be cool to see that happen where it's a live person, because I know HHN likes to do scare actors mauling like a mannequin or something like that. So it would have been nice to see Kendo being there, or even what I thought would have been cool if they went into Kendo's shop is him being eaten by his daughter, because in the Resident Evil 2 reboot and in the Resident Evil books, his daughter is bitten and infected, and she's the one who ultimately eats him in the book as well as the remake. So I was like, oh man, missed opportunity. But yeah, the Nemesis.
About your main gripe, not the whole story. House again.
Yeah. I go off on tangents. I'm sorry, guys. My main absolute gripe is the bobblehead pop vinyl look of Nemesis. So, by the time that this house came out, they had already seen Nemesis and what Nemesis looks like in like real life, if you will, not video game world, because at that point in time, the second Resident Evil movie had already come out. Nemesis was already in it. I get how Nemesis, if they tried to make that outfit, it might be heavy on some of the scare actors. But if you look, if you stop and pause and really take like a deep look at the Nemesis outfit, it's so cartoony, it's not even funny. You have this huge head on tiny bodies. Like, if you wanted to go OG Resident Evil 3 game, Nemesis was built more like a linebacker in football. They had huge comical pop vinyl type heads on what looked like to be small, slender females or thinner male bodies. So it looked absolutely unrealistic, and if I was there, I would go through that house and then never go through it again. I liked aspects of it.
I would still love it.
I love the game paused aspect of it, because if you look around the room during that thing, it actually looks like you're seeing Leon Kennedy falling from the sky shooting up at something. So there were aspects of it, like it was like a very paused frame kind of moment that I thought was cool. I also like the fact that you die in it. You don't survive in it. Like, that's very unheard of in a lot of HHN houses. I know Depths of Fear, there's the timer that ticks down, and you don't survive there. But in Resident Evil, you don't survive because you get blown up. Because as you're trying to get out of there, and it's like, get to the chopper, get to the chopper. Well, Nemesis shoots down the chopper, and you don't make it out before the missiles arrive. So you die in-game, and it's a nice nod to Resident Evil 3's ending, because it does... the Resident Evil 3 ending is you have to make it out of the city before the nukes arrive, because it gives you a timer. You have to go through 2 back-to-back boss fights with Nemesis at that point. And it was very nice to see that. Outside of the Nemesis and like the missed opportunity with Kendo's versus like Tony's Pizzeria, like it looks like a fun house, but Nemesis, like I said, would draw me way too much out of it. Like, I am very protective of him, and like if you are going to make a Nemesis, you have to do Nemesis right. You can't make him so bulky and burly that he is slow, because he runs at you in Resident Evil 3. You can't make him so thin that he's just another zombie with like guns. So you have to do Nemesis justice, and I feel like they didn't do it in that house.
Yeah, I can agree with you, Teddy. The Nemesis costume did look a bit off, and I mean, I understand it logistically, since you have to build this costume in such a way that multiple people can wear it night after night after night. Although, a villain that I feel like would have been easier to make a costume like that for is Mr. X.
Yeah, so like Japan gets all the good shit. With Disney, with Universal, we were watching a walkthrough of Universal Japan's house, and they have Mr. X in it. And this came out before the Resident Evil 2 remake. If I remember correctly, is kind of like a promotional thing for the game.
It was like
but
an
it,
escape room / haunted attraction where you could like learn how to shoot and stuff like that.
yeah, you could shoot the zombie. You could shoot at the zombies not with real guns, but like with like laser light type guns. And like one aspect of the game is you're actually shooting at Mr. X. You see him try to punch through a wall to try to grab you, but he gets shot and he moves away. If they did something like that, it would have been great. But they didn't. So.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over. I did want to put in a little slice of HHN in there, you guys. So it was kind of cool how it tied in because they did have a house of it already. I would actually like to see, not even being a fan of it, just knowing that there are like so many people like you guys that are big fans. I would like to see them maybe try it again in the future. Maybe with some more, but a better budget maybe, or just some more technology involved and stuff. So yeah, but I want to start wrapping it up here. We have, talked quite a bit, and you guys, I'm so glad that you guys were on here because, again, you guys are like the experts, at least to me. But yeah, so we'll start with Teddy. Where can we find you if you'd like to plug anything?
So you can find me at Zalanthus89 on Twitter. I don't have any other social media outside of that because I'm one of the uncool people and I'm not very photogenic, so I don't have an Instagram or Snapchat. So you can find me there. As far as things I want to plug, I hope you guys continue to listen to the Scream Queens. I feel like they're a very needed voice in the community, and I'm very happy that I have the ability to have been on here not once, but twice. Maybe again sometime in the distant future, because I know you guys are probably sick of hearing from me. But, I mean, just please keep listening. Please keep showing you their love. I know, Cece really appreciates it, and I think Jess also really appreciates all the love and all the support they give. So keep listening, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we do. I don't want to get into that because I'll get emotional, but we really do support everybody, or we do appreciate everybody that supports us. Sorry, I'm tired. I'm getting there. It's kind of late. So Steven has some fun stuff that he wants to talk about today. I'm gonna let you take it away. Like, if you want to start with social media, if you want to plug any social media, you're free to do so, and then go right into what you want to talk about.
All right, sure. Thanks, Cece. Yes, I do have a Twitter. It's at Vin Winters, VENWINTERS. Catch me on there, and you'll see my irate and sarcastic comments on horror and other related nonsense. I'm also starting a YouTube channel called Cribside this Halloween that focuses on video essays on the horror genre. So perhaps a Scream Queens Cribside crossover is in the future for us? Question mark.
Ooh, I'm excited to just watch it anyway.
Yeah. And my the final thing I have to plug is I am also an author, and I've written a book called Gothic, with a K. And if you like the Vampire Chronicles or Frankenstein or Dracula, you would probably love this book. And I'm just going to take a moment and read the synopsis for you all. So, Emma thought death was the end, but it was only the beginning. Through the advancement of 19th century science, Emma has been brought back to life, but not as she once was. She has become a new person, created from the sown remains of the dead. Emma awakens in her strange new world that she doesn't understand. The life she left behind still echoes within her, though no matter how she reaches for it, the memories slip away. Yet another force hides in the shadows and threatens to throw Germany into war. Emma's newly found world begins to crumble around her, and she must soon decide whether she wishes to begin her life anew or continue with the life she left behind, and whether she belongs in the world of the living or the dead. And you can find Gothic on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
That's awesome. I am excited that you got to talk about that finally. We've been talking about that for a while. So yes, please check out his book if you are interested in any of those things. I know I have been actually diving back into a lot of the Universal Monsters movies lately myself, because I never got to see them growing up. So if you have Peacock, there's a free trial too. I think you can do if you want to see any of the classic monster movies, because you kind of reminded me of that when you said Frankenstein and stuff. So that's exciting. Please support him if you're a reader. Definitely check out his book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So yes, it's been great, guys. I want to plug our housekeeping. So you can find the Scream Queens on Twitter at ScreamQueens85. You can find us on Instagram at The Scream Queens Podcast. We do have a Facebook like page. It's not very active. I did post something the other day, so it's here and there. Twitter is our most active, so definitely check us out there. And some very new exciting news for October, because next week will be our first October episode. We are starting what is called Spooky Bitchtober, okay? So we're going to be doing reviews mostly of Halloween, basically movies that have taken place on Halloween or anything that's related to. So just to give you a hint, just think Halloween movies that take place on Halloween, okay? There are going to be 4 episodes, like standard episodes, because I believe there are 4 weeks in October. However, we do have one bonus episode at the end of the month, and we are going to throw in another bonus episode possibly. The 6th one is a possibility. I don't know yet. It might just be 5. Either way, though, you got a lot of content coming because it is October, and, you know, October is our month that we thrive. So we're really excited to let you guys know about that, because that's our next big project. And again, if you love horror movies or even just spooky movies, because we're not just keeping it horror, we're doing, again, movies that take place on Halloween. So definitely check that out. And as always, thank you guys for coming on. I really enjoyed speaking with you guys and listening to you guys talk about something that you're very passionate about. That's one of my favorite things about bringing on guests, because usually I'll try to find guests who are relevant to the topic. So again, thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. But we must bid you adieu. It is about that time. Stay spooky, everybody out there. Please wear your masks, wash your hands, save Halloween because it is coming up soon. Either way, I'm getting spooky no matter what. So, but anyway, peace out, guys. Bye.
You're all going to die down here.